Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Kraus, and welcome to the South Coast Air Quality Management District. A couple notes for the. Oh, hello. You are at, by the way, the CalEEMod update workshop. So if you are planning to go something else, if you think this is about, I don't know, railroads or ports or airplanes or whatever, you're in the wrong meeting. But this is CalEEMod update workshop. This class is designed to be 2 hours, so not as long as the NBC coverage of the Winter Olympics in the evening prime time. We don't plan to take a break then. We plan to just move right along. But if you do need to take a, quote, break, those facilities are just down the hallway. However, that's not rude, okay, if you need to get up and deal with that. What is rude would be, however, if your phone rings and you start chatting in the room because other people are trying to enjoy this high entertainment. Of course, if you text, whatever, that's all cool, because I probably will text myself during my own presentation. This is being webcast, so if you do have any questions and there's a microphone that's being passed around, please speak to the microphone, because that way those on the webcast can hear your question. And then we don't have to repeat it or even understand it for that matter. Okay, this class will be put in 2 different parts. So I will be discussing but the webcast, by the way, there is an email address for those webcasting who want to submit a question to us. So we'll be fielding those questions over there. My colleague, James Kazumi, will be reading those emails out or printing those out and getting those to us. My other colleague, Ian McMillan, will be helping, assisting in fielding those questions, as he probably knows more about this program than I do. Okay, so we'll be discussing an overview of the presentation, catch everybody up on where we're at with CalEEMod, and we're also going to provide a little example project. Yesterday, I posted that example project as well as the presentation. So, and again, anybody hearing it on the webcast, you can go online at www.caleemod.com and pull out those files. Okay, this is a workshop. We chose that word specifically. It's not really a training for CalEEMod. We did a training before of CalEEMod. CalEEMod's been out for a little bit, so we think people are pretty much up to speed in the general mechanics of the model. However, if you're interested in getting any more specific training, et cetera, you can contact us and we can discuss. We're also looking, by the way, in the future, putting together little video clips that we can provide online and, again, assist people for various portions and functionalities of the model. We are accepting questions from the audience again, and again, we'll be doing that online as well. Some questions, if they're a little too complicated, like, can you help me with my detailed project? Obviously, we're not going to field those here. We'll just do that offline, so don't be surprised if I say no. Okay, let's move on. Okay, CalEEMod. So for those of you who don't live in California or been kind of living under a rock, we did come out with a computer model called the California Emissions Estimator model, and it quantifies both criteria pollutant and greenhouse gas emissions from various different types of land use projects. Land use, by the way, is something like a residential, more specifically single-family housing or apartment buildings or commercial facilities such as a general office building, and going down the line, retail, recreational, educational facilities, et cetera. So we evaluate 68 different types of land use categories. We do program the model to have the latest emission factors, the most approved methodologies, as well as some of the latest survey data. The reason for that survey data is because we wanted to design the model so there would be defaults for any of the information that people may just generally not know about a particular type of land use. We provided the best educational answer we could come up with. But what we do provide the user, as you'll see later on, is the ability to override that. This is a statewide model, so it does apply to all California's 38 air districts. In addition to the air districts, the model can calculate based on county, air basin, as well as statewide. And just as a reminder, what an air basin is versus a district. So an air district tends to be dictated by multiple cities or counties, while an air basin is dictated more by the geographical or meteorological conditions of that region. The model calculates emissions for both the construction as well as operational phase, and within the operational phase, we also calculate what we call area sources, and we can look at that momentarily. Calculates both direct and indirect greenhouse gas emissions, so we're talking about things like water use or energy use, solid waste disposal, as well as some of the benefits one gets from planting vegetation, so from sequestration. And then finally, calculating the benefits from various types of mitigation measures. With the models designed for a variety of functionalities, so you could be calculating for a specific project or a mixed-use project, a plan, inventory, as well as an overriding user defined. It's a statewide. Users are expected to be varied from consultants to planners to developers to decision makers. And again, the flexibility of the model is to allow those that know very little about their project to be able to run the model, as well as those that are a little more savvy, unlike myself, and can download specific type of information about their project and again, still run. Think of CalEEMod as one big calculator. So it's a big computer spreadsheet that is, once it's whatever information it gets in, can take that and make those calculations and give you those air quality analysis answers you're looking for. Okay, what's a little history? Let's catch up here. So the first version was released back in spring of 2011. We have thousands of downloads from across the state on that version. At this point, a majority of the air districts and a number of local government agencies are recommending the usage for their air quality analysis. Some are actually even requiring it. The ownership has been passed over to the California Air Pollution Control Officers Association, CAPCOA. CAPCOA is the umbrella organization for our 35 air districts in the state of California. And we were also able to obtain the copyright for the name CalEEMod. So you'll see the little R now applied to the name. A couple years ago, California Air Resources Board, as they normally do, come out with their periodic updates for their emission factors. These are both for the on-road vehicles as well as their off-road equipment. And that was called MFACT 2011. Of course, MFACT standing for emission factor. The modifications then we wanted to make to the model, we decided to build more just on the update and include some interesting new items, things people have brought up, concerns they might have had to correct into that upgrade. That modification ended up taking a little longer than we expected. It ended up taking 21 months to prepare as well as to test, but we wanted to make sure we had an extensive testing on that. We released it back in July. However, no matter how many extensive testing one can do, you can still run into a little bit of pitfalls, and even after that, people, when running it, comes across a unique scenario that we didn't catch in our testing and needed a little tweak. So we actually made 2 tweaks, one in September, one in October. So the latest version you find online at the www.caleemod.com is that version, the latest version we released in October. When it comes to the numbering, by the way, we release the model name pursuant to the year that we release it. So we're trying not to be Microsoft, where it's like, this year we're releasing, Microsoft 2007. No, we are, we released it in 2012, so you'll find it's MFACT 2012. The version 2, because it's the next major version, and then of course 0.2, because they were little subs that we released subsequently. Okay, so this is a list here of some of those major upgrades that we made that you'll find in the latest version of CalEEMod. The AP42 MFACs for paved roads. Like I mentioned, CARB's MFACs, as well as their off-road. One of the biggest issues I found from the original version was it's too slow. We want it to go faster, and I was like, why? What else are you doing? And that was important, though. And so we were able to go back in and take a look at the coding and upgrade the platform, and we were able to improve the speed efficiency 60%. We corrected some reloading problems that we're having, as well as providing a new feature that everybody was interested in, not changing the defaults every time something happens to the earlier screen. So we provided a new feature this time around called Cascade Default Button, so you can freeze what information is in those further pages. So they won't keep changing. We also calculated off-road equipment used during the operation of a project. So that would be like if you have a warehouse and you're using forklifts, now the model can go ahead and calculate those emissions from those off-road equipment used during the operational phase. Someone had an interesting idea about parking lots, because parking lots tend to have elevators, they tend to have ventilation, lighting, things like that, and whether we could calculate the energy impacts from those sources. And so that's also incorporated, as well as updating certain default values. There were some issues about the defaults we use for the industrial land uses and whether they were too high, so we did a further work on that. That work, by the way, can be found in Appendix E of the user's guide. And so everybody knows, up to date, by the way, we do have a user's guide, and we have appendices supporting all the methodology and equations that we put into the model. So that's like your supporting documentation for the usage of the model. There was also a question about whether we could change the square footage of the architectural coatings. We felt that a lot of people initially wouldn't really know how many walls would need to be painted in a particular type of land use, so we provided that default value. However, some people, noted to us that they will put in prefab walls, and then I look around here, I go, oh yeah, these like cloth ones that don't need any painting. Why would you, need to calculate for that kind of square footage? So we've now opted for to open that up and allow the user to make any necessary changes. But once again, as we've had it consistently, a user would need to justify that change in the remarks box below, and that gets printed out in the report, so someone who's reviewing your project can get a better understanding of why you made that change. Okay, a couple more changes there, and we'll get into those in a little bit here. So, online training segments I mentioned, the website, www.CalEEMod.com, has those various support documentations for everybody, including, I find these days, the user tips. This tends to be a really key document because it's a dynamic document. As things come up and people note, we either want to explain for clarity for the user, or possibly if it's something we might consider an inconvenience to the user, we want to provide a workaround. So I highly recommend people taking a look at the user tips document. Okay, it's an onslaught of words, but I just thought, since you would have this anyway, in front of you, that to give you some ideas of some things we're going to be looking at in the future, such as ARB coming out with their 2014 MFACT updates this summer. So we're automatically, again, looking to the future of updating the model again, and that makes sense. It's a model. It's just the way models work. Okay, we plan to do a construction study because the construction defaults that we have was taken from a study that we did a bunch of years ago, and things have changed, and or maybe not, but we were not going to know until we got there and do a study to determine what. Something else somebody brought up about the dates that trigger the construction phase dates. So we just have a fixed date that starts January 1st, let's say, and then everything goes on from there. So basically what happens is it kind of almost forces the user to keep changing those construction dates. And there was an idea that was really clever. If we had the user tell us when they think their construction date is going to start on the first screen, then when it clicks to the next screen for the construction phases, it uses that date and trickles down from there. Doesn't mean the user wouldn't still want to change it, but it may get them a little bit closer to an idea, a portfolio of what their construction phases will more accurately look like. And there's a couple more updates here. There was a piece of advice, by the way, someone had said to us. I didn't include it on this list, but just came up recently. We calculate for consumer products in the model. So the calculates VOC from various types of consumer products, let's say in a household, your hairspray to your cleaning products and what have you. And someone noted that, well, if I have a non-residential, like a city park or a golf course, how much hairspray or cleaning products or whatever am I using? And it's a good point. The model automatically just uses that non-residential consumer products default value. So there's some thought in the future we're going to take a little closer look at those specific land uses. Again, getting a more accurate analysis and response out. Okay, so that's the list. I'm not going to bother going through all that, but let's just highlight some. Give me 1 second here. Okay. He's telling me to keep it down. No, I'm kidding. He didn't say that. He did mention something really important. So I talked about how we have CAPCOA as our umbrella group over our 38 air districts. Well, within CAPCOA, there are various groups that meet on a monthly basis. So the group of executives meet, the lawyers meet, the planning department meets, engineers meet. Under the planning department, which is our purview, they have a group of focus groups focusing on specific areas in planning, such as climate change, or in this particular case, CalEEMod. So we are, there's a focus group, CalEEMod focus group, which we help run here at the South Coast, or from the South Coast, but it involves the 6 major air districts and 2 of the medium-sized districts. And they get involved, and we meet also on a monthly basis to discuss CalEEMod, discuss these upgrades, if we're in a contract, where it's at, some of these ideas. So all of this stuff, whether it's this future list of ideas or the user tips, all kind of get generated through like this focus group. So there's a real vetting process that's going on. So we do encourage people out there that are listening in on the webcast that your local air districts, such as Sacramento and Bay Area, San Joaquin, to contact them or to be involved with them as well, because they can provide a lot of great insight and some advice as well on how they believe best to run the model for your jurisdiction. Okay. So some just wanted to, these are just still screens. We're going to go through a little example project here, but just to kind of highlight some things to kind of to note here. We have a new option again to not populate defaults. So what will happen here is on every screen we provide this little box. It's normally checked off because the checking means we expect that the model will cascade or populate defaults depending upon the information you provide. So just as a reminder, those that put in that particular land use, the model picks that up, grabs the defaults for those particular land uses, and populates those further pages with whether it's energy information or solid waste information or what have you. Sometimes when a consultant, we're told, is working on a project which has variable input information. For example, do we want our apartment building to have 50 units? Do we want to have 100 units? Do we want to have 200 units? Whatever. We definitely want to stick to a certain, let's say, construction schedule or certain default types of information that they've already put into the model that they don't want to have repopulated again. So they've overridden some of the future defaults. They don't want to have it overridden again. So in the earlier screens, they can change out some information, such as, again, the number of units for that particular residential project, and then can click that box off, and so it will freeze that default information on the later screens, and then you can run your model based on that different value at the beginning, but not the later values in the changed defaults. Talked about the parking lots. So in order to best calculate all these new energy impacts, we had to take a step back and say, okay, so there's a difference between a parking lot versus a parking structure that might be enclosed or not enclosed, with an elevator or without an elevator. So you'll see some new listings there for parking subtypes. Again, we're allowing the option to change the square footage of the architectural coatings. And again, that's both for the construction phase and the operational phase. But one piece of advice, the model doesn't know that if you're changing on the construction phase that you automatically want to change the square footage on the operational phase. So, and the thinking behind that, the focus group thought about was, if the construction means you have a prefabricated wall but can still be painted during the operational, so years later in the operation of that project, you would possibly then want to go back and do a reapply of coatings. Now, you can still change that square footage. It's just that it automatically does not do that. So just heat advice. Okay. We had to create a whole new page now for the off-road equipment used during operation. So you'll see a listing. This is not defaulted. It's not automatically defaulted, I should say. So it would force the user to have to go into that page if you happen to have a piece of off-road equipment used during operation and pick that piece of equipment and decide how many pieces you're going to be using, how many hours a day, etc. It will automatically default the horsepower and the load factor based upon the higher activity bin coming from the CARB database. This was an issue on the construction mitigation page that came up before. We were forcing everybody, if you had one change, if you were doing one tier on one piece of equipment, you had to change all of the list. So we've changed that out to have a default there. So you can just go in and just change that one piece of equipment that you want mitigated, and it will calculate appropriately. And I believe lastly here, we've got the mitigation pages list out all the different various types of GHG mitigations. We advise people to go to the CalEEMod document for quantifying greenhouse gas mitigation measures. A lot of people said, okay, that's great. We go to this awesome document and it's got all this cool information, but I'm not quite sure which mitigation number I'm looking up. So we decided, just for ease, to relate each of those mitigation inputs with the appropriate number that you can find back at the CalEEMod document. So hopefully that makes that readability a lot easier. And that's my information there. This presentation has been put, again, online, so you can download it at any time. Okay, let's pop out for people. Let's put it on the camera. Again, for those on the webcast, there are questions you can send to inquiry@caleemod.com. Okay, we got a question here from Vince Mirabella at Brandman and Associates. Did you say you wanted to field this? Okay, yeah. Go for it. And again, Ian McMillan.
Hi, everybody. So 2 quick questions here. First question is there a workaround for the problem of the construction phasing schedule resetting back to the default after entering a project-specific schedule? As far as we know, that was fixed in this latest version. So if there's still issues with that, let us know, and we'll see what's going on. But as far as we know, that's working. Second question is, what is the status of the district's warehouse trip generation study? That's a separate study that we're doing outside of CalEEMod, but it feeds into the trip rates for CalEEMod. That study is underway. We have a web page on AQMD's website that you can go to that discusses the status of that study. It's underway. That's about all I'll say on that.